The morning I decided to remove my pool, I never imagined it would spiral into the neighborhood drama of the century. My name is Marcus Thompson, and I've lived at 847 Maple Grove Drive for 8 years now. What started as a simple home improvement project became a battle that would test every ounce of patience I thought I had. It all began 3 months ago when my wife Sarah was diagnosed with severe chlorine allergies. The doctor's words still echoed in my mind. "Mr. Thompson, your wife's respiratory issues are directly linked to prolonged chlorine exposure. The chemicals are essentially poisoning her system." Sarah had been suffering from chronic coughing, burning eyes, and skin rashes for over a year. We'd tried everything: saltwater systems, natural alternatives, UV purification, but nothing worked. The pool that once brought us joy had become a health hazard, threatening the woman I loved more than life itself. The decision wasn't easy. That pool represented thousands of dollars and countless summer memories. My kids, Emma and Jake, had learned to swim in those waters. We'd hosted barbecues, birthday parties, and lazy Sunday afternoons floating on inflatable flamingos. But when I watched Sarah struggle to breathe after just walking past the pool area, the choice became crystal clear. Her health trumped everything else. I spent weeks researching pool removal companies, getting quotes, and planning the logistics. The process would take about 2 weeks: draining, breaking up the concrete, hauling away debris, and filling the massive hole with clean dirt. I pulled all the necessary permits from the city, checked with the homeowners association, and even consulted with my insurance company. Everything was legitimate, legal, and properly documented. That's when Karen Whitfield entered the picture. Karen lived in the house directly behind mine, and our backyards were separated by a 6-foot wooden fence. She was one of those neighbors who seemed to have appointed herself as the unofficial neighborhood watch commander. In her mid-50s, with perfectly coiffed blonde hair and an arsenal of floral sundresses, Karen had opinions about everything, from the height of your grass to the color of your mailbox. Most neighbors learned to smile politely and avoid engaging with her excessive complaints about property values and neighborhood aesthetics. I should have seen the warning signs. Earlier, 2 weeks before the pool removal was scheduled to begin, Karen appeared at my front door with what she called a friendly neighborhood concern. She stood there in her signature pink sundress, clutching a manila folder thick with printed documents. "Marcus, honey," she began in that sickeningly sweet tone that made my skin crawl. "I heard through the grapevine that you're planning some major construction work. As your concerned neighbor and someone who's lived here for 15 years, I feel obligated to discuss the potential impact on our property values." I explained the situation: Sarah's health issues, the medical necessity, the proper permits. Karen listened with a plastic smile that never reached her eyes. When I finished, she opened her folder and began spreading papers across my kitchen table uninvited. "Oh, sweetie, I completely understand your wife's condition," she said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "But you have to consider the bigger picture. Do you know what removing a pool does to property values? I've done extensive research." She pointed to printed articles, real estate statistics, and highlighted passages about pools increasing home values by 15 to 20%. "Karen, I appreciate your concern," I said, maintaining my composure, "but this is a health emergency. My wife's doctor has made it clear that continued exposure could lead to serious respiratory damage." Her expression shifted slightly, the fake sweetness cracking at the edges. "Well, have you considered covering the pool instead? Or maybe installing a more sophisticated filtration system? There are so many alternatives to complete removal." I explained that we'd already tried every alternative recommended by multiple doctors and pool specialists. Nothing worked for Sarah's specific condition. Karen's smile faded completely, replaced by a look of barely contained frustration. "Marcus, I'm going to be completely honest with you," she said, gathering her papers. "I've invested a lot of money in this neighborhood. My property backs up to yours, and when people see your backyard, it affects my home's value too. A filled-in pool area is going to look like a construction zone for months, maybe years. The landscaping will be beautiful," I assured her. "We're planning a vegetable garden, some fruit trees, and a play area for the kids. It'll be much more natural and appealing than the current setup." Karen stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "I really hope you'll reconsider, Marcus. For everyone's sake." The way she emphasized everyone's sake sent a chill down my spine. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a threat. Over the next week, Karen launched what I can only describe as a harassment campaign. She started with passive-aggressive notes left on my windshield, suggesting various pool maintenance companies that specialize in chemical-free solutions. Then came the phone calls, daily inquiries about whether I'd come to my senses about the pool removal. She began documenting everything. I'd catch her taking photos of my backyard from her second-story window. She'd walk her tiny chihuahua past my house multiple times a day, always slowing down to peer over the fence. When I was in the garage, I could hear her talking loudly on her phone about property value destruction and inconsiderate neighbors who don't care about community standards. The breaking point came exactly 1 week before the pool removal was scheduled to begin. I was in my backyard measuring the space where Sarah's vegetable garden would go when I heard Karen's voice from the other side of the fence. "Excuse me." "Marcus," she called out in that artificially cheerful tone. "Could you come over here for just a teensy second?" Against my better judgment, I walked to the fence line. Karen was standing on what appeared to be a stepladder, her head and shoulders visible above the wooden barrier. She was holding a clipboard and wearing latex gloves. "I'm conducting a little survey for the Homeowners Association," she announced. "Did you know that major landscape modifications require unanimous approval from adjacent property owners?" "That's not true, Karen," I replied calmly. "I checked with the HOA directly. Pool removal is considered maintenance, not modification, as long as proper permits are obtained." Her smile faltered for just a moment before snapping back into place. "Well, I think there might be some confusion about the rules. I've been in contact with several board members, and there seems to be some concern about the potential mess, noise, and long-term impact on the neighborhood." I felt my patience wearing thin. "Karen, I've done everything by the book. This is happening whether you approve or not. My wife's health is not up for neighborhood committee review." That's when her mask finally slipped completely. Her face flushed red, and her voice rose to a near shriek. "Don't you dare talk to me like that. I've been trying to be reasonable, but you're being completely selfish. You don't care about anyone else in this neighborhood." "This conversation is over," I said, turning to walk back toward my house. "You'll regret this, Marcus," she shouted after me. "Mark my words, you'll regret this decision." The next morning, I discovered what Karen meant by her threat. I woke up to find my car windshield covered in flyers, professionally printed. Sheets with photos of beautiful backyard pools and bold text reading, "Save our neighborhood property values." At the bottom, in smaller text, it urged neighbors to contact the city planning department to voice concerns about destructive landscape modifications at 847 Maple Grove Drive. Karen had distributed these flyers to every house on our street and the 2 adjacent blocks. My phone started ringing before I'd even finished my morning coffee. Some neighbors called to offer support and share their own Karen horror stories. Others called with genuine questions about whether the pool removal would affect their property values. A few, clearly influenced by Karen's propaganda campaign, called to express their disappointment in my inconsiderate decision. But Karen wasn't finished. Over the next 3 days, she escalated her campaign to levels I never could have imagined. She created a Facebook group called Maple Grove Property Values Preservation Committee and began posting daily updates about the destruction happening at my address. She shared photos of my house, my car, and even pictures of Sarah leaving for work, accompanied by dramatic captions about selfish neighbors destroying our community. She organized a petition demanding that the city revoke my permits. She contacted local news stations with claims that I was illegally dumping construction waste and operating heavy machinery without proper licensing. She even called the health department, claiming that my pool removal would create toxic dust clouds that would endanger children at the nearby elementary school. Every single one of her claims was investigated and dismissed. My permits were valid, my contractors were licensed and insured, and all environmental protocols were being followed to the letter. But Karen's relentless campaign was taking its toll on my family's peace of mind. Sarah, already struggling with her health issues, began having panic attacks every time she saw Karen in the yard. Emma and Jake started asking why the mean lady was always taking pictures of our house. I found myself checking security cameras obsessive. I was outside greeting the demolition crew foreman Dave when Karen's front door flew open like something out of a horror movie. She burst onto her porch wearing a bright red robe, her hair in curlers, clutching what appeared to be a megaphone. Behind her, I could see at least 6 other neighbors filing out of her house. Apparently, she'd been hosting some kind of war council sleepover. "Stop right there!" Karen's voice boomed through the megaphone, causing several birds to flee from nearby trees. "This is an illegal operation, and I'm calling the police!" Dave, a burly man in his 50s who'd probably seen every kind of neighborhood drama imaginable, just shook his head and chuckled. "Sir, you got all your permits in order, right?" "Every single one," I assured him, pulling out my folder of documentation. City approved, HOA cleared, all contractors licensed and bonded. But Karen wasn't finished. She had positioned herself at the corner of her yard, still in her bathrobe, directing her small army of supporters like some kind of suburban general. Mrs. Henderson was taking photos with an enormous camera. Mr. Peterson from 2 doors down was recording everything on his phone. Even young Trevor Williams, who couldn't have been more than 19, was there with what looked like professional video equipment. "Marcus Thompson is destroying our neighborhood," Karen continued through her megaphone. "This illegal demolition will cause property values to plummet. We demand that this operation be stopped immediately." The demolition crew exchanged amused glances. They'd clearly dealt with difficult neighbors before. Dave approached me with a clipboard. "Mr. Thompson, we're ready to begin. Standard protocol is to start with draining the remaining water, then we'll begin breaking up the concrete. The whole process should take about 8 days." That's when Karen made her first tactical error. She climbed onto a plastic lawn chair to get a better view over the fence, still wielding her megaphone like a weapon. "I'm calling Channel 7 News. They're on their way to document this travesty." "Ma'am," Dave called out politely, "you might want to step down from that chair, for safety reasons." "Don't you tell me what to do," Karen shrieked, waving the megaphone dramatically. "I know my rights." What happened next would have been comical if it hadn't been so disturbing. Karen, gesticulating wildly while standing on the plastic chair, lost her balance. The chair tipped backward, and she went tumbling into her own rose bushes with a crash that could be heard 3 blocks away. The megaphone went flying, landing in my pool with a satisfying splash. For a moment, there was complete silence. Then Karen began screaming, not through the megaphone this time, but with her own voice, which was somehow even more piercing. "Assault! Assault! They pushed me! They tried to kill me!" Her army of supporters rushed to help her up, all talking at once. Mrs. Henderson was asking if she needed an ambulance. Mr. Peterson was checking his phone recording to see if he'd captured the fall. Trevor just stood there looking confused about what he'd gotten himself into. But here's where things took a turn I never could have anticipated. As Karen's supporters helped her to her feet, I noticed something odd. Despite her claims of being injured, she was moving perfectly fine. No limping, no wincing, no signs of actual pain. She was checking her phone obsessively, looking increasingly frustrated. "Where are they?" she muttered, loud enough for me to hear. "They should be here by now." Dave had started up the pool pump to begin draining, and the noise was considerable. Karen began pacing back and forth in her yard, still in her bathrobe, making frantic phone calls. I could only catch fragments of her conversations, but what I heard was concerning. "What do you mean you're not coming? But I told you this was a major story. Environmental violations, community outrage. What do you mean no actual violations were found?" It was becoming clear that Channel 7 News had decided Karen's story wasn't newsworthy after all. Probably because their fact-checkers had verified that everything I was doing was completely legal and properly permitted. That's when Karen made the call that would change everything. At 8:47 a.m., I heard the distant wail of sirens. Karen's face lit up with vindictive satisfaction as she pointed toward the street. "Here they come. Now you'll see what happens to people who destroy neighborhoods." 2 police cars pulled up to my house, and 4 uniformed officers got out. I felt my stomach drop. Even though I knew I was doing nothing wrong, there's something inherently unsettling about having police show up at your door because of a neighbor dispute. The lead officer, a tall woman with graying hair and tired eyes, approached me with a notepad. "Good morning, sir. I'm Officer Martinez. We received a report of illegal construction activity and possible assault at this address." I explained the situation calmly, showing her all my permits and documentation. Dave backed me up, explaining that they were a licensed demolition company, performing standard pool removal services. The officer examined everything carefully, asked a few questions about the work timeline, and seemed satisfied. That's when Karen made her grand entrance. She had changed out of her bathrobe into what I can only describe as a courtroom outfit, a severe black dress, her hair pulled back in a tight bun, carrying a leather briefcase. She marched up to Officer Martinez with the confidence of someone who believed she was about to win a major victory. "Officer, thank God you're here," Karen began, her voice now calm and measured, a complete 180 from her earlier megaphone hysteria. "I'm Karen Whitfield, and I'm the one who called. This man," she pointed at me dramatically, "is conducting illegal demolition work without proper permits, and when I tried to peacefully protest, his construction workers threatened me with violence." Officer Martinez looked at me, then at Karen, then at the permits in her hand. "Ma'am, I've reviewed all the documentation. Everything appears to be in order. All permits are valid and up to date." Karen's composure cracked slightly. "That's impossible. I've done extensive research on city ordinances. Pool removal requires special environmental impact studies and community approval hearings." "Ma'am, that's not accurate," Officer Martinez replied patiently. "Pool removal is considered standard property maintenance as long as proper permits are obtained and licensed contractors are used. Both conditions are met here." But Karen wasn't giving up. She opened her briefcase and began pulling out papers. "I have documentation proving that this project violates at least 17 city ordinances and 3 state environmental regulations." Officer Martinez accepted the papers and began reviewing them. After a few minutes, she looked up with barely concealed exasperation. "Ma'am, these are printouts from a DIY home improvement blog. They're not actual city ordinances." That's when I saw something in Karen's eyes that made me genuinely concerned. It wasn't just anger or frustration, it was desperation. A wild, cornered animal kind of desperation that suggested she was about to do something even more irrational. "You're all in on it!" she suddenly screamed, her carefully constructed composure completely shattered. "The city, the police, the contractors, you're all working together to destroy our neighborhood. This is corruption at the highest level." Officer Martinez exchanged a look with her partner. They'd clearly dealt with this type of situation before. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to calm down. There's no conspiracy here. This is simply a homeowner exercising his legal right to modify his own property." But Karen was past the point of reason. She began pacing in circles, gesticulating wildly, her voice rising to a near shriek. "You don't understand. If they remove that pool, it's going to start a chain reaction. Property values will collapse. The whole neighborhood will turn into a slum. We'll all lose our homes." That's when Sarah appeared at our front door, drawn by the commotion. She was wearing her oxygen mask, something she'd started using on particularly bad days when the chlorine exposure symptoms were severe. The sight of her, clearly struggling to breathe, should have been enough to make any reasonable person understand why we were removing the pool. Instead, Karen's eyes locked onto Sarah, and something truly ugly twisted across her face. "Oh, please," Karen scoffed, her voice dripping with venom. "What a convenient little performance. How much are you paying her to fake those symptoms? Is this all some elaborate insurance scam?" The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt my hands clench into fists, my vision narrowing with rage. But before I could respond, Officer Martinez stepped between us. "That's enough," she said firmly to Karen. "You're making serious accusations without any evidence. I strongly suggest you return to your home before this situation escalates further." But Karen wasn't done. She turned to her small army of supporters, most of whom were looking increasingly uncomfortable with her behavior. "Don't you see what's happening here? They're all protecting each other. The police won't investigate because they're probably getting paid off too." Mrs. Henderson, who had been one of Karen's most vocal supporters, finally spoke up. "Karen, honey, maybe we should just let this go. The man's wife is clearly sick, and if the permits are legal—" "Traitor!" Karen screamed, pointing at Mrs. Henderson. "You're just like the rest of them, cowards who won't stand up for what's right." That's when Officer Martinez made the decision that would reveal the shocking truth behind Karen's obsessive behavior. "Ma'am, I'm going to need to see some identification," she said to Karen, pulling out her